My boyfriend's friends had planned a neat little performance. He was supposed to pretend he was done with me, supposed to stand in my living room, raise his voice, make me look like the problem, and storm out while everyone watched. That was the part they rehearsed. The part they didn't rehearse was me already knowing. So when he finally said, "I can't do this anymore," I looked at him calmly and answered, "Perfect. Now everyone will know what your friend told me." And the second I said that, Trevor's eyes snapped toward Noah so fast it almost looked painful. What happened after that shattered all of them. But to understand why that moment mattered, you need to understand me first. My name is Audrey Bennett. I'm 29 years old, and I work as a commercial property appraiser. I evaluate retail centers, office spaces, mixed-use buildings, and apartment complexes for banks, developers, and investment firms. It's not glamorous. Most days it's square footage, deferred maintenance, roof conditions, electrical systems, vacancy rates, lease comps, and long drives between places that smell like dust, concrete, or stale air conditioning. But it pays well, and more importantly, it taught me how to see. That's the thing about my job. You stop trusting surfaces. A building can look polished from the street and still be rotting behind the walls. A set of numbers can seem clean until one line item sits just slightly out of place, one crack above a doorway, one water stain in the back hall, one answer that comes half a second too late. I notice those things. It has saved clients a lot of money. Unfortunately, that instinct doesn't turn off when I come home. I had been dating Ryan Mercer for 2 years. We met at a mutual friend's barbecue in the summer of 2022, the kind where everyone stands around pretending paper plates and string lights make a backyard feel magical. I remember the heat that evening, the smell of smoke from the grill, Ryan standing near the cooler in a navy t-shirt, laughing at something somebody said, then glancing over and catching me watching him. He had an easy smile, warm, open. The kind of smile that makes you think a person must be simpler than they are. We started talking over bad beer and overcooked burgers, and somehow stayed in the same corner of the yard for almost 2 hours. Childhood stories, travel, work, our favorite terrible movies, the strange jobs we'd both had in college. He told me he liked how direct I was. I told him he talked like someone who had never had to fight to be understood. He laughed and said that was probably true. We clicked fast. 6 months later, Ryan moved into my apartment outside Austin. The lease had always been in my name, and at the time, that detail felt administrative, not important. For a while, life with him felt steady in the way people always promise love should feel. We had routines. Sunday mornings meant farmers market coffee and produce we were too ambitious to finish before it spoiled. Tuesday nights meant cooking experiments that usually ended with one of us saying, "Should we just order takeout?" Friday nights meant movies on the couch with the lights low and Ryan's arm draped over my shoulders, like that alone was enough to make a future feel real. I'm not naive. I know no relationship is perfect. I know closeness eventually becomes routine, and routine can look boring from the outside. But I thought boring was a luxury. I thought ordinary was what happened when two people were safe with each other. That was before I understood how much of my relationship had been happening just outside my line of sight. Ryan had a tight-knit group of friends from college. There was Trevor, his closest friend, loud and opinionated, and somehow always performing, even when nobody had asked for a show. He worked in sales and had that aggressive charisma some people mistake for confidence. He was the kind of person who interrupted stories to make them about himself, the kind who leaned too far across the table when he talked, like volume alone could force his version of reality on everyone else. Then there was Noah, quieter, sharper, a graphic designer with a habit of watching a room before speaking. Noah didn't talk much, but when he did, it was usually precise enough that people paid attention. He gave off the impression that he noticed more than he let on. And then there was Evan, who worked in marketing for a tech startup and always seemed to be organizing the next brewery night, lake weekend, group dinner, football watch party, or short trip somewhere everybody would photograph and pretend had been spontaneous. They did everything together. Thursday nights out. Weekend plans every other month. A group chat that made Ryan's phone buzz at all hours. I got along with them well enough, or at least I used to think I did. They were always perfectly pleasant to my face, invited me to dinners sometimes, laughed at my jokes, asked polite questions about work, but every now and then I would catch something underneath it, a look that lasted too long, a silence that arrived too quickly when I walked into a room, that subtle shift that tells you people are making space for you without really letting you in. It wasn't enough to accuse anyone of anything. Just enough to feel, and I felt it more strongly in late September of 2024. It was a Friday evening. I had just gotten back from spending most of the day appraising a strip mall in Round Rock. 3 hours of measuring vacant units, photographing damaged ceiling tiles, checking electrical panels, documenting water intrusion in the rear storage area of a neglected tenant space. I was sweaty, tired, and mentally fried. All I wanted was a shower, something cold to drink, and silence. But Ryan was in the kitchen chopping vegetables when I walked in, and he turned with that easy smile and said, "Trevor, Noah, and Evan are coming over tonight. Just dinner and drinks. We haven't had them over in forever." I paused with my bag still on my shoulder. "Tonight?" He nodded. "Come on, it'll be fun." I nearly said no. I should have, but he stepped closer, kissed my cheek, and said, "It'll be good to have everyone together." So I agreed. I showered, changed into jeans and a clean blouse, and helped set the table. Ryan handled the pasta. I made the salad. We moved around each other in that familiar domestic rhythm couples mistake for security. They arrived around 7. Trevor came first with 2 bottles of wine and the kind of energy that immediately made the apartment feel louder. Noah brought an elaborate cheese board from Whole Foods, complete with dried fruit, crackers, and a wedge of honeycomb arranged like he was styling a magazine shoot. Evan brought cupcakes from some trendy bakery downtown and announced with complete seriousness that they were artisanal and would change our lives. We ate, we drank, we laughed in all the places people are supposed to laugh. Ryan had made lemon garlic shrimp linguine, a recipe he'd been perfecting for weeks. Trevor told a story I'd heard before about getting lost in New Orleans during a bachelor trip. Evan described a terrible date he'd had the week before with a woman who apparently spent 40 minutes talking about her ex and crypto. Ryan laughed so hard at one point he had to wipe his eyes. It all looked normal. It even felt normal, if I only paid attention to the surface. But underneath it, something kept pressing at my instincts. Maybe it was the way Trevor kept glancing at Ryan before making certain jokes. Maybe it was how Noah seemed quieter than usual, almost preoccupied. Maybe it was the fact that I caught Evan checking his phone and smiling to himself in a way that didn't fit the conversation happening in front of him. Around 9:30, Ryan stood up and said he was going to the bathroom. The second he disappeared down the hallway, the room changed. Not dramatically, not in some theatrical, obvious way. Just enough. Trevor leaned forward slightly, wine glass in hand, and looked at me with an expression I still remember too clearly. Half amusement, half pity. "So," he said, swirling the wine, "how are things really going with you two?" I set down my fork. My first instinct was confusion. My second was alertness. "What do you mean?" I asked. He shrugged too casually. "Nothing, just asking." "Things are good," I said. "Really good, actually." Evan and Noah exchanged a glance. Quick, small, but not small enough. That was the moment I felt it for real. That shift in the air when everyone at a table is suddenly aware of a second conversation happening underneath the first one. "No reason," Trevor said, but his tone said the opposite. "Just making sure my guy's happy." My guy. Not both of us. Not you two. My guy. I looked at Noah then. He lowered his eyes to his plate almost immediately. And that, more than anything Trevor said, put ice in my stomach. Because loud people bluff all the time. Quiet people usually only look guilty when there's actually something to be guilty about. I was just opening my mouth to press harder when Ryan came back. The shift vanished instantly. Trevor leaned back. Evan grabbed his wine. Noah looked up with a neutral expression like he had been thinking about nothing at all. And just like that, the conversation veered into some reality show I had never seen. The rest of the night passed without incident. They left around 11. Ryan kissed my temple while we cleaned up and thanked me for being a good sport about the dinner. I smiled. I even kissed him back. But inside, a part of me had already started cataloging details. Trevor's tone, Noah's silence, Evan's glance. That question, how are things really going with you two? When we went to bed, Ryan fell asleep quickly beside me. I stayed awake longer than I wanted to admit, staring into the dark. 2 weeks later, on a Wednesday afternoon in mid-October, I was working from home at the kitchen table, reviewing appraisal notes, when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "You should know what's really going on. Meet me at Riverside Cafe tomorrow at 3 p.m. Come alone. Noah." I read it once, then again, then a third time, slower. My heart didn't race the way it does in movies. It sank. Heavy, quiet, certain, because that wasn't a casual message. That was the kind of message that arrives when your life has already started changing and you're just the last person to be informed. I didn't tell Ryan. When he got home that evening and asked how my day had been, I said, "Fine." He kissed my forehead. He talked about some stupid thing Trevor had texted the group chat. He suggested we order Thai food. I smiled when I was supposed to smile. I nodded at the right moments. I sat beside him on the couch while some cooking competition played on television and wondered whether the man next to me had any idea that the floor under both of us was already starting to split. The next day, I went to Riverside Cafe alone. I got there 10 minutes early because I couldn't sit in the apartment another second pretending my life was still intact. It was one of those small coffee shops near the lake that tried very hard to look effortless. Mismatched wooden chairs, exposed brick walls, handwritten chalkboard menus, abstract local art, hanging crookedly in black frames like somebody had splashed paint onto canvas and convinced the city it meant something profound. On any other day, I might have found it charming. That afternoon, it felt like the kind of place where people came to say things that changed lives. Noah was already there. He was seated in the far corner, away from the windows, a latte in front of him that looked untouched. One hand rested around the mug, but he wasn't drinking, just holding it, staring into it. He looked up when I approached, and in that one glance, before either of us said a word, I knew two things. First, whatever he had to tell me was real. Second, he hated being the person who had to say it. I slid into the booth across from him and set my bag beside me. "What's this about?" My voice sounded calmer than I felt. Noah didn't answer right away. He kept staring at the latte foam like maybe there was still time for it to rearrange itself into a better version of this conversation. Finally, he exhaled and said, "I don't know if I should be doing this." My jaw tightened. "Then why text me?" He looked up. "Because you deserve to know." There it was. No build-up, no easing into it. Just that sentence, sitting between us like a blade. And suddenly the sounds around us got sharper. The steam wand hissing behind the counter, a spoon clinking against ceramic somewhere to my left, the low murmur of two women talking near the window, somebody laughing outside. The whole world had the nerve to keep going. "Know what?" I asked. He swallowed. Then he said it. "Ryan's been cheating on you." I didn't move. I think people imagine moments like that as explosive. A glass shattering, a chair scraping, somebody crying. But for me, it wasn't like that. It felt more like the inside of my body had gone silent all at once. I just sat there, staring at him, waiting for him to correct himself. He didn't. "With who?" I heard myself ask. The question sounded distant, like someone else had asked it from across the room. Noah rubbed a hand over his face. "A woman named Elise." The name landed harder than I wanted it to. Not because I knew her. Because I didn't. There is something uniquely humiliating about discovering there is a whole second person living inside your relationship and you've never even heard her name. "She works in finance," Noah continued quietly. "Some investment firm downtown. Ryan met her through a mutual friend at a rooftop bar back in early summer. It started a few months after that." "A few months?" I repeated. He nodded once. "About 4 months ago." 4 months. My mind began doing what it always does when something doesn't make sense. Sorting, cross-checking, laying timelines over memories. 4 months ago would put it around June. June was when Ryan told me he'd started going out more with Trevor's circle because one of the guys from college was in town. June was when he had 2 sudden late nights in the same week and came home smelling like cologne that wasn't his usual one. June was when he started taking his phone into the bathroom. Small things. Meaningless alone. Devastating together. "How do you know?" I asked. Noah held my gaze for the first time since I'd sat down. "Because Trevor and Evan know. They've known almost from the beginning." The words made my stomach turn. "Excuse me?" He gave a humorless little laugh. "They've been helping him cover it up." For a second, I genuinely thought I might be sick. I looked down at the table, then back up again, just to make sure the room was still there. "Cover it up how?" Noah lowered his voice. "Fake plans. Fake guys' nights. Lies about where he's been. If you thought he was out with us, sometimes he wasn't. Sometimes he was with her." I pressed my fingers into the edge of the booth beneath the table. "Sometimes where?" "At her apartment, hotels, bars downtown, wherever they could get away with it." Hotels. The word echoed. Hotels meant intention. Not some drunken mistake. Not one bad night. Planning. Booking. Time. Money. Deliberate choices repeated enough times to become a pattern. A second life. Noah kept talking, but every sentence felt like another support beam giving way. "He talked about her like it was exciting," he said. "Trevor especially fed into it, made it sound like Ryan was getting away with something impressive, like it made him smarter than you." That one hurt in a way I hadn't been ready for. Not just betrayal, ridicule, entertainment. A private joke where I was the punchline and the only one not invited to laugh. "And Evan?" I asked. Noah's mouth flattened. He went along with whatever Trevor wanted. He always does. I sat back slightly. Why are you telling me now? I asked. If this has been going on for 4 months, why now? Noah flinched. Not dramatically. Just enough for me to know the answer was going to be ugly too. Because they're planning something for tomorrow night. The air in my lungs turned cold. What kind of something? He hesitated. Then said, a setup. I stared at him. He continued, his voice flattening like he was forcing himself through each sentence. They're coming over to your apartment again. Ryan said he wants to do something dramatic. Make a scene. Pretend he's the one ending things. I blinked once. Slowly. What? Noah looked sick now. Trevor thinks it'll be funny if Ryan acts like he can't take the pressure anymore. Like he's fed up. He's supposed to stand up in front of everyone, start a fight, make it look like you drove him away, then walk out. I said nothing. I couldn't. Because there are betrayals, and then there are humiliations designed in advance. This was both. And the point of that is what, exactly? I asked. Noah gave a small shrug full of disgust. I think Trevor wanted to see how you'd react. Ryan went along with it, Evan too. They were talking about what you might do. Cry, beg, get angry, throw something. Trevor said he'd pay money to see you finally lose that calm act. I almost laughed. Not because anything was funny. Because only people who have never been truly disciplined think composure is fake. I had spent years building a life by staying calm when clients lied, when numbers shifted, when deals started to rot from the inside. Calm wasn't an act. It was control. Did Ryan say why? I asked. Noah looked at me for a long moment before answering. I think he wanted control. That answer lodged under my ribs because it felt true. Men like Ryan don't always cheat because they're miserable. Sometimes they cheat because being wanted by 2 women at once makes them feel larger than they are. Sometimes they stage the ending because they can't tolerate being seen as the one who failed. And sometimes their friends cheer them on because cruelty is the only entertainment they know how to create. When exactly? I asked. Tomorrow night, around 7:30. Same setup as before. Wine, dinner, casual hangout. Then, whenever Trevor gives him the signal, Ryan starts. I looked out the window. A cyclist passed on the sidewalk. A woman in sunglasses crossed the street carrying a paper bag and iced tea. Normal life. Always normal life, moving inches away from catastrophe. Noah spoke again, softer this time. I'm sorry. I turned back to him. He looked genuinely wrecked. I should have said something sooner. Why didn't you? The question came out flat, not cruel. He accepted it anyway. Because I kept telling myself it wasn't my relationship. That he'd stop. That maybe if I stayed out of it, it would burn out on its own. He swallowed. And because Trevor has a way of making everything feel like if you object, you're being dramatic, like you're ruining the fun. The fun. There it was again. My pain as recreation. My dignity as a social experiment. Noah leaned back and rubbed both hands over his face. But last week, when Trevor started talking about tomorrow like it was some kind of show, I just couldn't do it anymore. For the first time since sitting down, I believed him completely. Because guilt has weight, and his had been dragging behind every word. Does Elise know about me? I asked quietly. Noah shook his head. I don't know for sure. Ryan implied she knew things were complicated, but Trevor joked once that women hear what they want to hear. I nodded once. That sounded exactly like the kind of sentence men say when they've lied to multiple people and want credit for the complexity of the damage. Noah reached into his jacket pocket and placed his phone on the table. There's more, he said. My eyes dropped to it. What is that? I took screenshots. I looked up sharply. He unlocked the phone and turned it toward me. A group chat. Ryan, Trevor, Evan. Several screenshots in a row. My own reflection floated faintly over the glass as I read. Trevor. Tomorrow better be worth it. Evan. She's gonna either cry or go ice cold. I can't tell. Ryan. Honestly, if she goes cold, that might be worse. Trevor. Nah, push harder. Make it about how she's impossible to live with. Ryan. LOL. Trevor. Bro, just commit to the performance. Then come out after. We'll meet you at the bar. I stared at the messages until the words blurred. Performance. That was the word they had used. Not conversation. Not breakup. Not truth. Performance. Noah scrolled further. Another screenshot. Trevor. Also tell her you've been unhappy for months. Women always scramble when you rewrite the timeline. Ryan. Jesus. Trevor. I'm serious. Evan. Cruel but effective. I looked away. I had reached the limit of what my face could do while still remaining arranged like a person. Noah quietly turned the phone back toward himself. You can send those to me, I said. He nodded. I already did. Check your messages. My phone buzzed in my bag almost on cue. I didn't reach for it yet, Because once I looked, the evidence would stop being just conversation and become something solid. What about proof of a lease? I asked. He nodded slowly. Not much directly, but Trevor mentioned a hotel once, and Ryan posted a story last month from a bar downtown. He deleted it later, but Elise was tagged in another photo from the same night. That was enough. Not enough for a courtroom. Enough for me. Enough for someone who had built an entire career on patterns, timing, and corroboration. I finally pulled out my phone. 2 new messages from Noah. Screenshots. A forwarded image of Ryan at some rooftop bar, half turned, smiling toward someone just outside the frame. And in the next photo, tagged on another account, there she was beside him. Dark hair, red lipstick, one hand resting lightly on his arm like she already belonged there. The date in the corner of the post hit me harder than her face did. Because that was the same night Ryan had told me he was stuck in Cedar Park helping Trevor deal with a flat tire. I remembered making him tea when he came home. Remembered asking if everything was okay. Remembered him kissing the top of my head and saying, "Long night." I locked my phone, set it face down on the table, and for a few seconds I didn't speak. Noah didn't interrupt. He seemed to understand that I was no longer just hearing information. I was rebuilding the last 4 months in real time. Every late arrival, every vague explanation, every moment he'd looked me in the eye and lied casually enough for it to pass as ordinary life. Finally, I asked the only question left that mattered. What do they think is going to happen tomorrow? Noah let out a slow breath. They think you'll be blindsided. I nodded. There it was. The assumption underneath all of it. That I would be the last to know. The easiest to manipulate. The woman in the room, least likely to understand what was happening until it was too late. I looked out the window once more, then back at him. Well, I said, and my own voice startled me with how steady it sounded. That part's not going to happen. Noah studied my face carefully. What are you going to do? For the first time since I'd walked into Riverside Cafe, I felt something solid beneath me again. Not comfort. Not peace. Something harder. I picked up my bag and stood. I'm going to let them come, I said. Noah rose too. Audrey, I'm not going to warn Ryan, I said. I'm not going to give Trevor the satisfaction of changing the plan. My pulse was steady now, the kind that comes when shock burns off and leaves clarity behind. I'm going to sit there, I said, and let them perform. Noah looked like he wanted to ask whether I was sure. I didn't give him the chance. Because I was sure, not of everything. Not yet, but of enough. Enough to know that if they wanted theater, I could give them an ending none of them had rehearsed for. When I stepped back out into the afternoon light, the world looked offensively unchanged. Cars still moved along the street, the lake still caught the sun. People still held iced coffees, answered texts, crossed intersections like nothing had cracked open beneath my life in the last 45 minutes. I drove home in silence. Fragments of thought kept surfacing and fading again. Ryan brushing flour off the counter in our kitchen. Ryan asleep beside me. Ryan saying my name softly like that meant honesty. When I got home, I walked slowly through the apartment. The living room, the kitchen, the hallway. All the places where ordinary life had been happening while deceit moved underneath it. I stood in the center of the living room for a long time, staring at the couch where Ryan liked to sit with one leg tucked under him. Tomorrow night, he was planning to stand somewhere near that coffee table and perform Heartbreak for an audience. And he truly believed I wouldn't see it coming. That evening when Ryan came home, he was smiling. Actually smiling. He tossed his keys into the bowl by the door and started telling me about some joke Trevor had sent in their group chat. Then he walked over and kissed me like men who are cheating somehow still manage to do. Casually, efficiently, like compartmentalization is a skill. "How was your day?" he asked. "Fine," I said. He loosened his tie. "You want to try that new pizza place tonight?" I looked at him, at his face, at the easy version of him I had loved. And for one strange second, I could see both men at once. The one I had built routines with, and the one who had helped plan my humiliation between text messages with his friends. "Sure," I said. He smiled. "Perfect." We ordered pizza, watched half an episode of a cooking competition neither of us cared about. He laughed in the right places. I responded in the right places. At one point, he rested his hand on my knee, like affection was still something he had the right to give. I let it stay there, not because I wanted it, because I was already thinking ahead. By the time we went to bed, my decision was clear. I wouldn't confront him early. I wouldn't warn him. If they wanted an audience, they would have one. And when the moment came, the truth would be waiting for them. Friday morning arrived strangely calm. Ryan woke up before me. I heard the coffee grinder in the kitchen, cabinets opening, water running. For a few seconds, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. 2 days earlier, I believed my life was stable. Yesterday, I learned my boyfriend had been cheating for 4 months. And tonight, he planned to stage a breakup in my living room for entertainment. I sat up slowly. Clarity has a way of simplifying things. Stay or leave. Pretend or tell the truth. Ryan walked into the bedroom holding 2 mugs of coffee. Morning. Like nothing in the world was wrong. He handed me one and kissed my forehead. Big day today? Just paperwork, I said. Ryan left for work around 8. The second the door closed behind him, the apartment fell silent. I opened my laptop at the kitchen table. Then I began organizing everything. The screenshots Noah had sent. Ryan's social media. Tagged photos. Location timestamps. Credit card statements. Appraisal work teaches you how to build arguments out of details. Evidence, timing, patterns. That skill translated disturbingly well to betrayal. By early afternoon, I had a timeline. June, rooftop bar. Elise in a tagged photo. July, hotel charge on Ryan's card. August, dinner receipt at the Driscoll. The same night, he had told me he was attending a networking event. I stared at that date for a long time. The Driscoll isn't subtle. People don't accidentally end up there. They go there when they want the night to feel important. By the time Ryan came home that evening, everything was ready. Not emotionally, structurally. Ryan walked in around 6:30. Trevor texted, he said while dropping his keys in the bowl. They'll be here around 7:30. I nodded while slicing tomatoes. Sounds good. He studied me for a moment. You okay? Yeah, just quiet today. Lots of reports. That satisfied him. He went to change his shirt. At 7:28, the doorbell rang. Trevor walked in first, loud as always. Look at this place, he said. Every time I come here, it feels fancier. Ryan laughed and clapped him on the shoulder. Evan followed with 2 bottles of wine. Noah came too, he added. Noah stepped inside last. Our eyes met briefly. He gave the smallest nod. Dinner started normally. Wine poured, cheese board opened, pasta served. Trevor told stories. Ryan laughed. Evan checked his phone. Every now and then, Trevor looked at me with quiet curiosity, like someone waiting for a show to begin. Around 8:40, I saw it. Ryan glanced across the table. Trevor gave the slightest nod. If I hadn't known to watch for it, I would have missed it. Ryan set his fork down. You know what? He said suddenly. His voice was louder than it needed to be. I can't do this anymore. There it was. The line. Exactly like Noah said. What are you talking about? I asked calmly. Ryan ran a hand through his hair. I'm tired, Audrey. I'm tired of constantly feeling judged, like nothing I do is good enough. Trevor leaned forward. Ryan continued. I feel like I'm walking on eggshells all the time. This relationship has become exhausting. I leaned back slightly. Are you saying you want to break up? Ryan hesitated just long enough. Yes. Trevor almost smiled. Evan lifted his phone slightly. Noah stared at the table. The room waited. For tears. For anger. Instead, I took a slow sip of wine, set the glass down carefully, and said the one sentence none of them had prepared for. Perfect. Ryan blinked. What? Perfect, I repeated. Now everyone will know what your friend told me. The room froze. Ryan's face drained of color. Trevor turned toward Noah instantly. Noah, you told her? Yes. Ryan looked like someone had knocked the air out of him. Audrey, Don't. My voice stayed calm. Don't lie again. Ryan's hands started shaking. I don't know what you think you heard. I know everything. I placed my phone on the table and opened the screenshots. 4 months, I said. The rooftop bar in June. The hotel in July. The Driscoll dinner in August. Ryan stared at the screen. Trevor stopped breathing. Evan looked like he wanted to disappear. And the best part, I continued, I also know about tonight. Ryan's head snapped up. What? The performance. I glanced at Trevor. The fake breakup. The plan to watch my reaction. Trevor's face drained. That's not... I slid the group chat screenshots across the table. Trevor read them, then leaned back slowly. Oh, Ryan turned to Noah. You took screenshots? Noah didn't answer. Ryan looked at me again. Audrey, listen. I stood up. You cheated on me for 4 months. You lied. You brought your friends into it. And then you planned a show where I was supposed to be the punchline. Silence. Finally, I pointed toward the door. Get out. Trevor stood first. Evan grabbed his jacket. Ryan stayed where he was. Audrey. Now. The word cut through the room. Trevor and Evan left. Noah paused briefly at the door. I'm sorry, he said quietly. Then he left too. Ryan was the only one still standing in the living room. Audrey, please, he whispered. Where am I supposed to go? I looked at him for a long moment, then said the only answer that mattered. I don't care. The next morning, my phone exploded with calls. Ryan, 17 missed calls, 34 messages. Please talk to me. I'm sorry. We can fix this. There were messages from Trevor too. Trevor, you manipulated the situation. Trevor. Ryan deserved a chance to explain. I didn't reply. Instead, I called a locksmith. By 2 in the afternoon, Ryan's key no longer worked. Then I packed his things. Clothes, shoes, books, the framed photo from our Colorado trip. 2 years of his life in my apartment reduced to cardboard boxes. I left them with the apartment manager downstairs. He could pick them up whenever he wanted. A few weeks later, I saw Ryan once, in a grocery store. He looked thinner, more tired. He froze when he saw me, probably searching for the right sentence. An apology. An explanation. I didn't wait to hear it. I picked up the apples I had come for and walked past him. Sometimes silence is the cleanest ending. By December, I moved into a smaller loft closer to downtown. High ceilings, tall windows, quiet. A place that felt like starting over. Work helped. Property appraisal requires focus, evidence, structure. Exactly the kind of thinking heartbreak tries to destroy. Routine returned slowly. Morning coffee, site visits, evening walks along the river. Life rebuilt itself piece by piece. Sometimes I still think about that night. Ryan standing there. Trevor waiting for the show. Evan lifting his phone. The exact second their plan collapsed. At the time, it felt like justice. Now it feels more like clarity. They wrote a story where I was supposed to be the last person to understand what was happening. Instead, I became the only person in the room telling the truth. And when the moment came, I walked away from the performance they had written for me.